Now, let me introduce our speakers for today. Joining us today is Alicia Conrad. She is a product marketing manager for Power DMS. And we also have Chief Debbie with us. He is the former chief of police for the Union County in New Jersey. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Alicia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Kate. We're going to get started here. We're very excited to chat with you all about this topic. As Kate mentioned, our webinar today is going to be covering responder morale and citizen engagement and what those have to do with one another, the surprising connection there that can help you boost retention in your agency. So let's get started. All right, so what we're going to cover data around low morale in the industry so we can talk about where are we today. We're going to talk about why it's so critical, and then also some practical steps to improve. And that's why we have our expert here, Chief Debbie. So excited to have you to share some real experiences, what's going on out there, and some best practices to make some improvements. All right. So here's some data, Chief Debbie. When we were looking at this data, talking about what's going on in the industry right now, it's a really compelling story about how much stress and burnout is in each of our industries in public safety. So for EMS, there's a lot of critical stress. For law enforcement, operational stress is just through the roof. And for dispatchers, there's just such a story of high burnout. So I'd love to talk about, what's happening here and what have you seen in the industry to kind of give a little more personality to these numbers here.
So thank you, Alicia, for having me on. It's a very relevant topic we're talking about right now, and it's a topic that we've been beginning to look at the tip of the iceberg in public safety, especially in law enforcement, for quite some time. I think it's about 30 years too late for this entire industry for us to be looking at these morale issues, these burnout issues, things like that. They've existed, but they've never existed as widespread and as large as they are now. It's an unprecedented time in our industry for both, dispatchers, for 911 call takers, for law enforcement, and for EMS and fire as well. It's widespread throughout our agencies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So with this data, what we really want to be asking ourselves is like, okay, this is where we're at today, and it's very unfortunate, but understanding maybe how we got here would be a great place to start to know, okay, what can we do about it, and knowing where is this coming from. So I'd love to hear from you a little bit on what's going on in the industry on a macro level in public safety. Why is this happening?
So I believe there's a number of different facets to why we're here and how we've gotten here. Absolutely, it's increased scrutiny and criticism of the public safety sector, especially law enforcement, which then affects your morale of your staff. And then by a poor morale, you oftentimes have hand in hand the decreased health and wellness as well of that first responder. Part of it is, it affects the huge burnout and the early retirement and the retention of these officers and of these first responders. And it really starts, I think, with not only increased scrutiny, but the public attitude that has changed towards this profession, especially law enforcement. And that's played in with a media hyper focus almost. Nowadays where we become so dependent on social media and so dependent on real-time communication and real-time events that 15, 20 years ago, what used to take a couple days to reach across the country via the national media now only takes a couple minutes to reach across the country. And I think that has been a huge play in as well for things.
Yeah, absolutely. So with all of that expectation for more immediate communication, citizens are using social media for everything now, expecting those kinds of text messages. Is that something that you're seeing there's more of a lag in our industries at this point?
Absolutely. Historically, public safety and law enforcement in general, along with government in general, has always been slow to jump into what's the mainstream, and it's always been slow to put your arms around new technology and put your arms around new things that could help. I go back to 34 years ago when I started. There were no computers in our police car here in New Jersey. However, there were computers in the West Coast. So the West Coast was using an early adopter of car computers, whereas it took a long time for it to spread through the country. And it's going back now with body-worn cameras. Body-worn cameras were, slow to come through our profession, and now you have, some contracts and some agencies that the officers can't leave their headquarters and go on patrol without a working body-worn camera. So the pendulum has swung that way. And I think once technology is embraced, realized, and used properly, and you can see what it's used for, it can be a huge assistance in our way of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking some about the increase in resignations, retirements, and retention there. Uh, can we talk a little bit about that and what in agencies is kind of causing this issue that we were looking at those data? What's going on at the agency level?
So I've seen across the country some really striking examples of retention issues. And there's been unheard of retention programs being put in place by major cities, Dallas, New Orleans, San Francisco, a lot of other cities, and a lot of smaller municipalities as well. And these programs, like for example, I believe it was Dallas, it was offering $40,000 a year for a 2-year additional commitment for a police officer. I mean, like I said, I've been a police officer 34 years. I have never heard of any type of retention issues or programs like that, which just is a magnet for what is happening right now, and a sign for how bad it just has gotten.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we're talking about at the agency level with recognition, could you talk a little bit about that? It's not that they're not appreciated, it's maybe what's going on there that we're not hearing as much of the recognition.
So, you get recognized, but you get recognized by your peers, and you get recognized by the administration. And, there's always, we're humans, we all want to have that recognition. We all want to have that pat on the back. And we want to be told, not by the people that have to tell us, like an administration, or, they feel that they have to be told by the administration. They want to feel it from the people that they're doing good. It's no different than walking into, say, Starbucks in the morning, and you're there every morning and you get the same latte, and the worker makes a fantastic latte for you, and you say to them, "Hey, that was a fantastic latte yesterday." That energizes the worker, and it's no different in this profession. Now, it used to be a lot different, but now it's a required aspect now.
Yeah, absolutely. When we're talking about that morale and the fact that it is lower today and that we're struggling with that today, we want to talk a little bit about why is that so important? Why is that something that we need to be focusing on in our agencies? So I'd like to chat a little bit about what it looks like, the difference between when morale is high and how that affects the
Mhm.
officer and how that affects the dispatcher, the EMT, the paramedic, firefighter. How does that affect our staff and how does that affect the agency as well?
So we all know that when you're happy, and when you're happy to come to work and you're happy to do the things that you are, I mean, come on, really, no one really enjoys going to work for every single day. I mean, yeah, you absolutely do, but you do it for a reason and you do it for a
Mm,
cause. And if you're appreciated by the people you serve when you come to work, you're going to want to come back to work. And the high morale end, once it's high, your agency is better, your agency is working better, your agency is acting better, it's responding better to issues and things, and it's able to, quote unquote, weather the storm when things get bad. It's easier to start from the top and work your way down always than it is start from the bottom and try to work your way up. And that's unfortunately the aspect when morale is low as well.
Sure. Is that something that you've seen personally that others can pick up on, like citizens, families? Is that something they notice?
Yeah, absolutely. When you have high morale, you usually leave work happier, better, ready to start your next job, which is, of course, your personal life when you're off of work, when you're out of this, the important part of re-energizing yourself, going home, doing things with your family, doing things with outside of this profession. And if you leave here happy, 9 times out of 10, you go home happy. And that translates into a happier lifestyle at home. If you leave angry, upset, unappreciated, oftentimes you go home the same way. And that transfers through the lines of your profession, really your career is what it is, and your home life.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to talk a little bit about this difference here between proactive and reactive. Now, obviously, that is built into training, but how can morale
Mhm.
affect that in an agency?
So, as I've come to find, and I'm sure many administrators, find as well, when you have happier, higher morale employees, they're more prone to get out and engage with people. They're more prone to discuss things. They're more prone to talk about their agency, to talk about the profession. For years, it's been a huge engagement problem with the community for law enforcement. And if you're happier and you enjoy what you do, you enjoy your profession, you're going to be engaging more. You're going to be more engageable when the public comes to
Mm,
you as well. If you have the lower morale, you're going to want to answer your calls. You're not going to want to interact with anybody. You're not going to allow them to interact with you, or if they do, it's going to be in a negative manner. And you're going to have that not caring attitude that you would have had you been more happier with things around you.
yeah, that makes sense for sure. I have another piece of data information here to share. Just talking about a large percentage of the workforce right now is in that millennial age group. And one of the things that CanGrade's report shows is that millennials really care about having a sense of purpose and mission in their career. It's one of the number one things that they say they care about. And in this industry, I feel like that's even more true. Can you talk a little bit about why do people get into this profession, and why is mission so important, and that buy-in for the mission there?
So there's a number of reasons why people take this profession. Some want to help. Some think it's we still have that small percentage of people that take this as a job and work paycheck to paycheck. And then there's a larger percentage of people that take this as a career and as a profession. And, this is important to them, and it's an important part of who they are and what they put out there. Absolutely, the workforce has changed. It's changed dramatically since even I've started, and the administrators that are on the call now will certainly agree with me and understand that maybe even 20 years ago it was so much different. It was, you were told to get back in the radio car. Okay, yeah, write that report, get back in the radio car, go answer the rest of the calls. And the generation that's coming to work now wants to know, well, why do they have to get back in the radio car? And they need that
Mm,
sense of purpose. And, why do I have to go answer those additional calls? And, it's the type of generation now, the workforce, that wants to be respected and recognized for who they are, the tasks that they're performing, and their daily involvement with things. And I think that as an administrator and as a chief, you need to identify that, and you need to embrace that as well, because everything changes. As much as police in our careers and in our way of existence here, nobody likes change, but if you don't change, then you're going to be what is labeled as a dinosaur, and those people that are 20 years or more can understand that. And it's important because the career path is changing for everybody, and
Yeah.
this new generation needs to be patted on the back, and that's really what's going to help everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that they really want to know the why. So talking about the why of the career and when burnout is getting high and when morale is
Mhm.
getting low and they're kind of losing that sense of why, what is a way that we can help to reignite that why and show them the purpose of what they're doing?
So, you know, um, they love to be everybody, and like I said earlier, we're humans. We love to be, have a positive stroke. We love to be appreciated and not, lumped in. And they need to know, just as we all need to know, that we're making an impact in the community.
Mhm.
We're making an impact from the community, and that's what's important for officers and public safety professionals to hear from their community. Hey, you're making an impact. And it's important for them to see that. It's like I said earlier, it's different coming from an administrator, coming from a chief walking through roll call. Hey, you guys did a great job. Coming from a citizen or coming from someone on the outside, that positive reinforcement is paid off 10 times more than it is coming from me.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels more authentic. Maybe
Hmm.
not as like, oh, you had to say that. Yeah, that
Absolutely,
makes sense.
absolutely, yes.
For sure. So I want to talk a little bit about the cycle of that high burnout, low morale. You mentioned being more engaged with the community and
Mhm.
hearing from the community. So I want to talk about where does community engagement fit? We talked about responder morale and citizen engagement. So let's make that connection here and look at what this cycle can look like when things are under stress.
Mhm.
I'd love to just hear from you about how this works and how one affects the other in your experience.
So I think this is a fantastic graphic and a fantastic slide. The only thing it's missing is about 4,000 spaghetti strings because they're all intertwined with each other and they all
Mhm.
work with each other. They're all synergetic between each other. Think about it. If you have a poor community relationship, you're going to have low morale because they're not appreciated. If you have low morale, you're going to have responders leave, the potential for responders to leave. And if more responders leave, your current staff is going to have experienced burnout because they're going to be running from call to call to call to call, and your staffing levels are going to be low. They're going to be mandated overtime. They're not going to get the time off they
Mm.
want, which leads then to understaffing, which leads to people calling out sick, people taking going out on leaves, things like that. It's a cycle that continues, and at some point in time, the strings have to be cut and restrung almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we were talking a little bit about some of those retention programs that you've seen like across the country, that's one way to try to address one of these pieces of
Mhm.
trying to boost morale, to interrupt it
Mhm.
there. But I think what we want to talk about today is how can we interrupt it everywhere? What are best practices to try to make the most impact? And then also specifically community relationships. But I'd love to hear from you just about best practices in your experience and from what you've seen in the field of how to interrupt this cycle that can sometimes feel a little hopeless.
Yeah, so I was a huge proponent in becoming more involved, being the administrator that is more involved. I got in the radio car once a quarter, sometimes twice a quarter, and got out there and answered calls, and did the work that the patrolmen were doing, and did the work that they were doing alongside of them. And I thought that that was important, to not be siloed and to stay in touch with the people and to stay in touch with, we're all, I like to think that nobody worked for me, everybody worked
Mm.
alongside me. And, I would never have asked somebody to do something that I wouldn't have been able to do myself, and stand alongside everybody, is to me a way for everyone to see, hey, this is, this is someone who cares, which is also very important in our field as well, to have somebody that cares. Equipping officers with stress management tools, that's huge nowadays. Like I said, we're about 30 years, as far as I'm concerned, too late dealing with the stresses and the wellness aspect of police and first responders as well. I'm very happy and very proud that over the last few years it's been identified more, and that people are really stepping up the game, because I think that that's a huge part of first responders and especially police officers, and how they can change themselves and change that cycle around that you had talked about earlier.
Mhm.
The positive reinforcement, again, that's, it's more positive coming from the public, and anytime you can have that public positivity, really pays off dividends tenfold than what I would say or any of my command staff would say to anybody. Improving community engagement, that's a given. We support the people. It's been a long time coming, but I think some of the executives in today's up and coming executives in today's law enforcement community are realizing that our community are consumers. They're consumers of us, and we're providing them services no different than an Uber driver, no different than a DoorDash person. We're still providing a service to that community, albeit at times at the worst part of their life and at the worst part of that they're experiencing at that moment. And we, as a law enforcement agency and as first responders, we're entering an era where, as far as I'm concerned, we need a marketing department for everything we do, for that positive aspect, not only from the community to our agency, but again, back from our agency to the community as well, to almost reinforce it with the community that, hey, your police department or your first responders are doing this, and they're doing this successfully, and they're doing it successfully because here we have quantifiable data that we can push forward to you, and to do that. And the last one, which I love on this slide, is be bold.
Yeah.
Be bold. Do things that you probably would not have done 5 years ago. We've all been through, a lot in the last 3 years since COVID, and the major national incidents that have occurred, and everything else that all has affected our profession, and every first responder too, but do things different that you would have been afraid to do at an earlier time. You don't know what you don't know. That's the famous saying, and you don't know if it's going to
Yeah.
work or not. But if it does work, then you know what? That's another tool in your toolbox for you to be able
Mm.
to use to help everybody else in your community and your officers.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to go back a little bit to that positive reinforcement when we're talking about, we keep saying to you, we really want to hear from citizens. What in most agencies does that look like? What options do citizens have typically today?
Well, unfortunately, there's 1,000 ways, and all the law enforcement people on this call will acknowledge this. There's 1,000 ways to make a complaint. There's really not a lot of, active ways to make a good complaint or a positive notation about what an officer or the agency or a policy has been.
Mm.
So there's social media. A lot of, almost every police department now uses social media. Every first responding agency uses social media, websites, all that require the citizen, the consumer, to find those and access them. A lot of times people don't want to do that. We had sent out surveys, written surveys, either once a year or a couple times a year, with very low response rates. And in those written surveys, you didn't know whether you were getting responses for interactions with your agency, interactions with another local agency, interactions with the state police, or something like that. So it was always a questionable survey as far as I was concerned. I was more interested in quantifiable real-time data about what we were doing on a daily basis.
Yeah. And I imagine that a lot of those, surveys and reactions that people are getting through their website or through social media are typically more negative because there's a lot of data around when someone has a really bad experience,
Mhm.
they're way more likely to share and go make that effort to, share that negativity and complain versus when someone has a really great experience they may not necessarily share. So I could see that being, you're only getting the negative through those methods.
Right, and that's an excellent point, Alicia. I mean, think about it. Think about when you go out to dinner and you leave the
Mm.
restaurant and it was a terrible meal. That's going to sit with you for probably weeks, and you're not going to go back to that restaurant. But if you had a fantastic meal and you were greeted, say, by the owner of the restaurant or the maitre d' as you were leaving, and the maitre d' or the owner said, "How was your meal?" and you had a great meal, you're more inclined to give them that positive information at that point in time. You're gonna, I hate to say forget about it because we often put the good things further back in our head than we do the
Yeah.
bad things because we're humans and we dwell on the
Yeah.
negativity of things a lot. But to have that ability to harness the real time effects and real time instances is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to definitely remember that for later. Right now, I'd love to um, talk about what this cycle looks like when it is broken and when we can make improvements where we're having that more positive effect within our agencies and for our staff. And how do these spaghetti strings tie together here?
Yeah, again, it's another spaghetti string slide, and it all plays intertwined with each other, and they're all pieces in the bigger puzzle. The stronger community relationships increase your morale. Your law enforcement agencies are more eager to engage with the community if the community is gonna say more positive things about them and respect them. And that it makes you happier to come to work, which increases your morale and then reduces your burnout. Everybody in this profession has some type of burnout. There's always days where, instead of doing 50 calls, you're doing 100 calls, or, half your shift is out sick, or, one district is more busier than the other district. So you're bopping back and forth between the two districts. So you're always going to have some sort of burnout. It's just, uh, the size of it and the bulk of it and how much it weighs on you. And I think with a strong community relationship and your morale being better, and that helps to reduce your burnout. And then if you can reduce your burnout, of course you can have an increased retention. And you always want to work. Everybody wants to work in an employment aspect that the people are happy to have them there. And if you have a strong, happy community relationship or a good relationship with your community, and they're happy to see you and they're happy to have you at work, that's going to increase your retention as an administrator.
Yeah, that makes sense. Earlier, you were talking about that statement of be bold and to not be afraid to try something new and to take a risk. So I'd love to hear from you on something that you did with your agency. What are some steps that you took to make those changes?
Yeah, this was beyond bold. This was aggressive as far as I'm concerned.
Mm.
But it ended up being bold and it ended up giving us huge dividends. So we were the first agency in the country to push out Engage, and it was brought forward by my dispatch staff, by the commander of my dispatch division, and I ran a regional dispatch center, and he was having difficulty getting quantifiable data about how his dispatchers were doing and how they were interacting with the public. You can review the 911 calls, you can review the tapes, you're required to for certification and things like that, but you don't know exactly how they're doing real time or from the public. You take cross sections. And the problem we had was the agencies that were our partner agencies in our center were doing surveys, but they weren't surveying how the 911 center was or the call takers were. and we saw this as an ability to drill down specifically on our call takers at first, and how they were interacting, and separated from the agencies, from our partner agencies, and get real-time information about how they were doing. We were getting ready to roll this out, and I was pacing back and forth the night before in my office, and I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my job. I'm looking to see how many boxes I need to clean my office out, because I thought for sure, as an administrator, as a chief, and any of the chiefs on the call, or deputy chiefs on the call can understand this. You don't want to open up your agency to real-time discussion, to real-time, almost real-time people referring back to you and having the ability to rate you, really, is what it came down to. And I said, sure, I'm beyond my retirement age now, so I can retire successfully with a full pension. So if it becomes too bad and they push me out, okay, they push me out. And then we tried it and we rolled it out, and we found that it was a huge success for our 911 center. We had such positive ratings and such positivity, and so high response rate, that we were like, why didn't we think about this earlier? Why didn't we do this earlier? And then, you get the, why was I worried? Of course it was going to work. Of course, everything. I trust my citizens. I trust my community. I trust my call takers, and it just was able to show us that they were doing the right job. And then those responses that we put back into the dispatch center, and they were able to see real time, from the citizens, really just kind of acted like a hug for our dispatchers, because they never get, recognized. Dispatchers, no one ever recognizes them. They're not on the scene. They're not being thanked by anyone out there. But this was an ability for us to pipe in real-time comments about the jobs that the dispatchers had just taken, 4 hours earlier. And they were able to read those comments, which ended up being huge for us. And then, we pushed it out onto the PD side as well. And again, I had the same issues, and I definitely thought I was going. I definitely thought. And I had actually, in between time, taken some stuff out of my office, so it had taken less boxes to clean my office out. And it ended up having the same reaction and the same results, and it was refreshing as a chief to be able to see real time what these officers are doing and how they're interacting and how they're treating people and how people are actually feeling about them, which was huge and never done before in real time.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like not only did it give you that data, but it reinforced your own trust in what your people were doing.
Absolutely. And also helped reinforce my command staff as well. And any, I hate to say, I think there's a saying 2 or 3% of your staff are naysayers. I think after this, I think the 2 or 3% were naysayers were brand new people that hadn't even stepped foot into the agency yet.
Yeah, gotcha. And when we're talking about these surveys and getting this data, these surveys are different. They're not the paper surveys. They're not the surveys that someone has to go to a link to fill out a long survey. It's based off of that CAD and RMS data, and it's sending to them after the incident, where you can schedule in a delay. So when you were talking about, you have a fantastic meal and the maitre d' comes by and asks you how it was, that's when you have that opportunity for that positive feedback. If you could talk maybe a little bit more about how much more positive feedback you were able to get and how much more feedback, I believe, let's see here. Yeah, this is the data actually from Union County, New Jersey, from your agency on that response rate, and the CPSS stands for Citizen Positive Satisfaction Score. So how many responses were positive? I'd love to hear from you about what these numbers did for your agency.
So actually, I just checked recently, and I think this month we're actually ahead of the 47% response rate. I think we're hovering around 53 or 54%. I think we're up somewhere to 95 or 96% CPSS scores. And they fluctuate like everything. and what this did is this allowed that it allowed the cementing of being told you're doing a good job, because it wasn't me telling, or my command staff or my supervisors telling the officers and dispatchers and call takers they're doing a good job. It's the public telling them they're doing a good job, and it's the people that they've just interacted with. We had triggers that would either do 4 or 6 hour surveys after an incident occurred, which allowed the citizen to um, you know get over that interaction with the get done with that high. You
Yeah.
want them to calm down, you want them to really think about what happened, and that's when we decided to send these out. And it was just such a mind-blowing interaction and response rate that really took all of us by surprise, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we were talking about that, the timing of these surveys, when you said that a lot of times with those paper surveys, it's once or twice a year where maybe they don't remember. Can you talk about
Yeah.
how that timing affects, like, not only being delayed a little bit to let them come down
Mhm.
from the incident, but what does that look like? What kind of more accurate data are you getting there?
So as far as I'm concerned, you're getting the most accurate data you can, other than standing in front of the person as soon as that officer has completed his task and asking them to create a survey, or having that officer ask them a survey as they're standing there in front of them, which, as we all know, is probably frowned upon and probably wouldn't work out well. But being able to trigger a very simple 3, 4, 5 question survey that had a very easy response protocol for it. It didn't take you to a separate link. It didn't take you anywhere else. You answered it right there, just like a text message. And you're rating on a numeric scale, and then you have the ability to put in some discussion points, or give a kudos to somebody that is reviewed and posted. That ended up being huge for us. Especially the comment section. We were harnessing
Mm,
real-time comments from the people that we had just got done serving. And that, showed my staff, as well as the dispatch staff, hey, you guys are on the right track. You're doing something right. And gave them the validation that, they needed.
yeah. How did you communicate that stuff? So when you received those great comments from the citizens, what
Right.
did you do with that in order to share that with your officers and your dispatchers?
So we had it on display boards, large screen TVs, and it was real-time scrolling in the dispatch center and also in the patrol suite. And those comments were, bifurcated and separated for call takers and the dispatch unit, and then the law enforcement part, only the law enforcement officers saw. And it ended up, like I said, it was especially for the dispatch center and for the officers as well, because the people don't take the time to say to the officer, thank you, as the officer's done writing his report, or you did a good job, or as they're pulling away from a scene to go write the report. The people are not, they're not trained to say thank you, and this actually helped show that they really did care.
Yeah, absolutely. I have some other stats here from a few other agencies just to talk about some best practices. So one of these things that you and I talked about a little bit are the callbacks
Mm.
and how much Power Engage can help with reducing those callbacks. So I'd love to hear from you about what you saw with this in your agency.
Yeah, this was a huge unintended success for us that we didn't even think about when we rolled this out into our dispatch center. After the call was completed by a call taker, it triggered the initial response protocols, and the information to the call taker, hey, if this is a burglary, and it was triggered by the call type. So they were getting specific, responder information, or specific information based upon the call that the police were en route to for them. So, for example, if it was a burglary, the dispatchers tell the citizens verbally over the phone, but we all know, we're trained to pay attention, and we're trained, we've been to thousands of calls like this, so it's just another day in day in the park for us. For somebody else, this may be the first time their home was broken into, or the first time their window was broken or car was broken into, and they're very upset and not really paying attention to the call taker. But these pre-arrival instructions that are sent by this system and triggered allow them, wow, I just got a text message. Oh, okay. They said to not go in the house, not to touch anything. Don't touch anything in my car, or an accident. Please stay to the side of the road. Be safe. Do things like that. Make sure you're in a safe area. Don't get out of your car on a busy highway. Things like that. Those ended up saving a lot of callbacks to us. But what saved more and more callbacks were the calls that were sent for the officers when they're en route. Your car has been dispatched to your call. They'll be arriving soon. Please keep an eye out for them, things like that. Because we all know in this law enforcement community, any moment, any other calls can come in that have a higher priority. So if the car is dispatched to that initial, say, burglary or motor vehicle, and then that car is dispatched to a higher priority call, maybe a high priority medical call, someone's having a heart attack or something like that, and they're closer, the text message is then sent out to the person with the car burglary. Your car has been assigned to a higher priority call. There's another car that is en route. Please wait, or they're en route. Please don't worry. If you have any further information, please contact the dispatch center. And that saved a huge amount of callbacks because, anybody that's involved in dispatch knows you're going to get callbacks. I called 15 minutes ago. Where's the police car? I called 5 minutes ago. Where's the police car? Oh, I thought you said you were coming. How come you're not here yet? And this is that ability to show them, hey, we're thinking about you. And this is, you're in our thoughts and you're in our system and the car's en route. And I think what's even better, and I've spoken to some people public that have gotten these text messages, they're thrilled. Hey, you guys really took the time to text message us. Well, we didn't. It's the automated system that took the time. But the public thinks that you're actually doing that. So in turn, gets the public thinking more positive about you as well.
Yeah, so it takes that communication that we were talking about that a lot of citizens expect nowadays with so much technology, and it automates it for you. So your call takers and your dispatchers aren't having to do that manually. That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, so another great thing that we've seen, Chief JT, he posts weekly on LinkedIn about the positive feedback and the score that they have. And we were talking about almost needing your own marketing department as an agency now. And I'd love to hear from you a little bit on how Engage can help with that.
Yeah, it acts as your marketing department because what you have the ability to do is take these positive comments, roll it into your LinkedIn, roll it into your social media, roll them into, your daily press briefings if you have them, roll them into your community press briefings, go to community seminars or community meetings and say, hey, this is what, the analyticals are so strong in this program that you can break it down by district. So if you're going to say a community meeting in one district, you can pull up those positive response rates that those district citizens have forwarded. And you can go to this community meeting and say, this is what people in your district, in your immediate community are saying about the police department right now. And this is what we have. And where this I find is a huge benefit is striking down the national trend of the national media and what the national outlook is. There's a tool in this in the analytical end called the tracker, and we were able to look at that tracker anytime a national event occurred and see if our community was engaging in what the media was saying and whether our positivity rates were dropping, and were they buying into what was happening across the country. And it ended up our community was not. And you have to imagine being 25 miles outside of New York City from where we are, anything that occurs in New York City is instantaneously broadcast into our communities. And any major law enforcement event in New York, we were looking then at the trend and the trend tracker, and we were finding that our communities, were not buying into what they were seeing and what they were hearing on the media about law enforcement issues spread throughout the country.
Right. So it was able to help you separate what's actually going on in your community and how your citizens feel and reinforce
Absolutely.
that, you're doing the right things
Hmm.
and that, you're there for your citizens and that they appreciate what you're doing. That's great.
Yep,
I'd love to
absolutely.
hear, you told me a story once about the citizen positive satisfaction scores within your agency and what happened when they started getting those scores and started comparing.
It's I'll tell you what, it's something I never thought I would ever see in my career. It's it I equate it to a baseball team, trying to out hit each other or outperform each other, a sports team. So in my dispatch center, we ended up having different platoons, when we pushed this out, different platoons and different shifts, engaging in a contest with the other shift, to find out on the other side, on the other 4 days, who could have the higher positivity rating, and who could beat the other side out. And then when it transferred over to the police department, the dispatchers must have been talking to the cops, because lo and behold, a couple months after we rolled this out on the police side, I was walking down the hall and I heard a shift coming out of roll call and talking about the same thing. We're going to get them. We're going to have that highest positivity rating this week. So it ended up that you had a shift in one platoon
Mm.
battling against the other shift, the opposite shift in the opposite platoon, of who could get the higher positivity ratings. And it was almost, wow, maybe I should give an extra vacation day or a half a day off for whoever platoon has the highest positivity ratings for the year. And it ended up being an eye opening moment for me, knowing that we made the right choice and that we had the ability to look at these things, and that it was bought in by the agency, which was huge.
Yeah, and what a great culture to be a part of, like trying to get the most positive score that really affects the way then that you're interacting with the citizens because you're aiming for that more positive score and to get
Mhm.
that service level elevated. That's fantastic. All right. So just to chat a little bit more about Power Engage in general, we've covered pretty much everything that it does, but if you're coming across any questions as we're talking about this product, about what it does, please feel free to put them in the questions chat and we will answer them at the end for you. But in general, Power Engage, the aim of it is to elevate an agency with citizen engagement. When we're talking about breaking that cycle of really automating the citizen engagement, which you've talked about some of, like what a big difference it makes when something is automated. And I'd love to hear from you a little more about when you're trying to do something like this and it's not automated, what does that look like, and is that even possible?
I'll tell you what, I would never have entertained it, because our budgets and our staffing is so tight, as
Mm.
it is across the country. You would be hard pressed to dedicate people to this program. The only way I think that this program succeeds and provides enough information, and the ton of information that you can get, is by it being automated. And I think that is a gigantic return on investment for any agency. It's an automated platform that you don't have to have anybody run, which is huge.
Hmm. Yeah, no extra dedicated staff for it, for sure.
Absolutely.
Especially when we were talking about the keeping the citizens informed
Mhm.
aspect of sending out those text messages of what to do while they're waiting. I thought it was just great to hear that that actually helped, when officers arrived on the scene, that people were doing exactly
Mhm.
what they needed to, that their expectations were met. Fabulous. All right. So really that's the majority of the content that we were going to cover. Just want to hit again on our goal here is to interrupt that cycle, to take it from that negative to the positive, show the reality, give you data, help boost your responder morale, and really change it and take it from that orange wheel that had a lot of things that were really struggling to that blue and green wheel that we were looking at, that when things are more positive with the stronger relationships, that it, reduces burnout, helps with retention. So we're looking for as many ways as possible to help affect change. And the data that we were looking at the beginning with, you know, how much burnout and critical stress that there is, and what can we possibly do to make a difference. And I just love any final thoughts from you, excuse me, Chief, on what we can do and about being bold, and just some last thoughts here.
Got to start somewhere. Yeah, you have to start somewhere. You have to make a choice. And oftentimes that choice, and as it proved out for me and my agency, that choice ended up reinforcing those spaghetti strings and helping each part of your wheel. You know, we're in a new world of policing that, you know, I've never seen, and anybody with more than probably 15 years on the job have never seen either. You know, we have a different consumer today nowadays than we ever did before, and they're considered consumers in our, you know, they should be considered consumers now. You know, the society nowadays requires instant results. They want to be the first one. They want to be the first one to know about something. They want to be the first one to do this, the first one to do that. And then they want to push it out. They want to be the first one to push it out. So to be able to have a platform like this that gives them that ability to be the first, to push it out, to push out your immediate thoughts and your immediate satisfaction, because that's what they're looking for now. Everybody wants immediate satisfaction and the ability to transmit how they feel immediately. You know, why not harness technology? Why not be on the forefront of harnessing that technology and using it to you know, to showcase your agency and to showcase your people, more importantly, and then more importantly to showcase your people and your agency to your community with what they're saying, and give them back what they're saying about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, we are about to answer some questions. First, while we wait for some of those questions to come in, I just want to touch on some of the resources that we will be sharing out with you as this webinar closes. We have a resource center dedicated to all things Power Engaged, where you can learn more about the product, learn more about how others are using it as well, and just kind of do research on your own if you'd like. We also have an article that covers a lot of the points that we touched on today, with research and data on how community engagement improves police morale and retention, and it is applicable across all of our industries in public safety. And then we also have a free ebook chapter from our large report on how to address the top 10 law enforcement challenges of 2023 that touches on low morale and officer burnout. So we will be sharing out those resources along with the slides and recording. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Kate.
Thank you. And we do have some questions. One of the questions is for Chief Debbie. When did you actually implement Engage?
That was about 3 years ago. We did it in 2020. I think it was November of 2020. So it was a difficult time. It was during COVID, and it was a you know, a very different type of world that we pushed this out in.
Yes. And another question was, how did you get buy-in to implement Engage?
It was, first of all, I had to be sold. And you know, like I said, it was a little difficult grasping the concept. But once I actually sat down and thought about it, and thought about the benefits of it, and thought about how everything could be intertwined with the issues that we were facing, and the issues that everybody was facing, I was sold. And then you know, a discussion with my command staff, and the same push out. You know, hey, this is you know, this is going to help us. This is going to allow us to see real time what's going on. And you know, it sold itself to the rank and file and to the call takers when they were seeing the positive comments and seeing what people were saying.
We also have a question. What happens if there's negative feedback?
Yeah, I can take that one. Within the system, you can actually build triggers on that kind of thing. So within Power Engage, there's something that we call a sentiment feedback sorting algorithm, where it sorts it into negative, neutral, and positive. So when we were talking about the screen that Chief Debbie had, all the positive feedback, you can have that automatically send to those screens and email to your responders directly. And then the negative feedback, you can have that automatically create a task for follow-up. So you can create those little reminders for supervisors or whoever you would like to receive those, to see what that negative feedback is, so that they can follow up directly with the citizen, so that sentiment is not just hanging out there.
And one last question for Chief Debbie. What kind of feedback did you get from the community when you implemented Engage? What was their reaction?
So we did a press release and had some, some community discussions prior to rolling this out, because we wanted the community to know you're going to be getting a tech survey. And it's legit. A lot of times now we're all taught not to answer anything, not to click on links or anything like that, which I think was one of the huge, and still is one of the huge successors of this program, is that it's not a link. It's a common text conversation type of platform. The community actually was very happy. They were happy to be able to give that feedback at that point in time. Almost instantaneous, which was very good for us and good for them as well, because they were being heard. They wanted to be heard, and we gave them the opportunity to be heard.
That's the questions that we have today.
All right.
I want to thank everybody for joining us for this amazing webinar on, really the responder morale and community engagement. Just a final reminder, you will get the slides and the recording tomorrow, and we would love to have you explore the resources that Alicia outlined and contact us. We're happy to help you as well. So thank you, everybody. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Bye.